Chapter 3. The Letters from No One. The chapter begins with the Dursleys and Harry continuing their lives at number 4, Privet Drive. For Harry, nothing has changed. He is still forced to live in the tiny, cramped cupboard under the stairs. The cupboard is cold, dark, and barely large enough to fit Harry's small bed and few belongings. Every morning, Harry wakes up to the sound of Uncle Vernon's loud voice, followed by Dudley's tantrums and demands. It's a life of constant mistreatment. Harry's clothes are always hand-me-downs from Dudley, far too big for his thin frame. His glasses are broken, held together by tape, and he is constantly given the worst tasks to do around the house. That morning, just like every other, Harry trudges into the kitchen, expecting nothing more than the usual dullness of life with the Dursleys. But as soon as he enters, something catches his eye. Lying on the doormat, amongst the usual boring letters and advertisements, is something that Harry has never seen before, a letter addressed to him. His heart skips a beat. Never in his life has anyone sent him a letter. And this letter isn't ordinary. The envelope is thick and made of a yellowish parchment. The address, written in emerald green ink, is astonishingly detailed. Mr. H. Potter, The Cupboard Under the Stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. The words stop Harry in his tracks. It's not just that someone has written to him. It's the fact that whoever sent the letter knows precisely where he lives. They know about the cupboard under the stairs. No one outside of the Dursleys should know this. And yet, here it is in black and green ink. For a boy who has lived in complete isolation, this is extraordinary. His heart pounds as he picks up the letter, wondering who could have sent it and what it could possibly contain. Before Harry can even begin to tear open the envelope, Uncle Vernon snatches it out of his hands. Vernon's reaction is immediate and intense, filled with paranoia. It's as if he had been expecting something like this, and the moment he sees the letter, his worst fears are confirmed. His face turns a sickly shade of purple as he reads the address. Without explaining anything to Harry, Vernon growls at him to leave the room. Harry is bewildered. What could be in the letter that Uncle Vernon is so afraid of? As Harry watches, Vernon rips the letter open, his hands shaking slightly. Whatever is inside shocks him. His eyes widen, and he whispers hurriedly to Aunt Petunia, who looks just as alarmed. There's a shared moment of panic between the two of them. But Harry is left in the dark, unable to figure out what they're hiding. Vernon doesn't allow Harry to see the letter. Instead, he crumples it up and burns it in the fireplace, all while muttering under his breath. With fury, and his face is turning an alarming shade of purple. He snatches the letter from Harry's hands, crumpling it with such force that his knuckles turn white. The sight of yet another letter drives Vernon over the edge. He's not just angry. He's terrified. There's a deep, irrational fear behind his anger, as though he knows that these letters represent something far beyond his control. He tears the letter into pieces, hurling the fragments into the air like confetti, his voice shaking as he declares, "I will not allow any more letters in this house." But Vernon's words carry no weight, because the next day the floodgates open. More letters arrive, dozens of them. They pour in with a relentlessness that leaves the Dursleys in a state of panic. Letters fly through the letterbox in a steady stream, each one addressed to Harry. Each one holds the same impossibly precise information, detailing his every movement. It's as though the letters are alive, adapting to every change in Harry's environment, refusing to be ignored. For Harry, it's a sign that the sender will not give up, no matter what Uncle Vernon tries. Uncle Vernon, however, is not ready to admit defeat. Determined to stop the letters, he nails the letterbox shut, hammering nails into the wood with frantic desperation. He works like a madman, sweating and grumbling as he seals the letterbox, convinced that this will put an end to the problem. But the letters keep coming, undeterred by Vernon's attempts. They slip through every crack in the house, as if the walls themselves can't contain them. Letters begin appearing under the doors, through the windows, and even down the chimney. each one addressed to Mr. H. Potter. Each one a reminder that the Dursleys are powerless to stop this unknown force. Harry watches in awe as the house fills with letters. It's as if the house is under siege, bombarded by an unstoppable wave of parchment. Every time Vernon destroys a letter, another appears to take its place. One morning, Uncle Vernon opens the eggs delivered by the milkman, only to find that even there, nestled among the yolks, are more letters for Harry. It's a surreal, almost magical invasion of the Dursleys' perfectly controlled world, and Uncle Vernon is losing his grip. The atmosphere in the house grows increasingly tense. Vernon's paranoia reaches a fever pitch. His face is constantly flushed, his eyes darting around, searching for the next breach in their defenses. The Dursleys are on edge, and the constant arrival of letters feels like a slow, inevitable countdown to something they cannot prevent. Driven to the brink of madness by the relentless flow of letters, Uncle Vernon makes a decision that shocks the entire family. He decides they have to leave. The letters, he believes, are tied to this house, to Privet Drive. If they can escape far enough, if they can outrun this invisible pursuer, maybe, just maybe, the letters will stop. Without warning, Vernon packs the family into the car. It's a hasty, chaotic affair, with Dudley whining about leaving his television behind, and Aunt Petunia anxiously glancing back at the house as if they're fleeing from some unseen monster. The car ride is anything but peaceful. Vernon drives with a wild look in his eyes, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turn white. He swerves through streets, driving faster and faster, as if speed alone could outpace the letters. The farther they drive, the more desolate the landscape becomes. Vernon takes them to increasingly remote locations, places so isolated that it seems impossible for anyone to find them. Harry, sitting in the back seat, can't help but feel a mixture of curiosity and excitement. He wonders where they're going, and more importantly, whether the letters will follow them even here. They spend a night in a rundown, grimy hotel, far away from the comforts of Privet Drive. The hotel is the kind of place that feels like it hasn't been cleaned in years. The wallpaper is peeling, and the bed sheets are stained and threadbare. Harry and the Dursleys squeeze into one small room, and the tension between them is palpable. Vernon sits on the bed, staring at the door as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. And yet the next morning, as they prepare to leave, letters addressed to Harry are waiting for them, slipped neatly under the door. Vernon's worst fears are realized. The letters have followed them, even here. With nowhere left to turn, Uncle Vernon's desperation grows. He drives farther and farther, taking the family to the most desolate, unreachable place he can think of. Finally, they arrive at a crumbling old shack perched precariously on a tiny, isolated rock in the sea. The shack is barely standing, with its walls leaning at odd angles, and the wind howls outside with the force of a storm. The sea crashes against the rock, threatening to engulf the entire place. Inside, the shack is cold, damp, and utterly miserable. The Dursleys huddle together, terrified and miserable, while Harry lies awake on the floor, the sound of the storm outside echoing the chaos of the past few days. Harry lies awake on the floor of the shack, thinking about the letters and the strange events of the past few days. It's the night before his 11th birthday, and as usual, there will be no celebration. The Dursleys have never cared about Harry's birthdays. But tonight feels different. The tension in the air is almost palpable, and Harry can't shake the feeling that something big is about to happen. As the clock ticks closer to midnight, Harry silently counts down the minutes, knowing that when the clock strikes 12, he will be 11 years old. Just as the clock hits midnight, there's a massive, earth-shaking bang on the door of the shack. The noise is so loud that it makes the walls tremble, and the Dursleys wake with a start, their faces pale with fear. The banging continues, growing louder and more insistent. Whoever or whatever is on the other side of the door is not going to be kept out. Suddenly, the door bursts open with a deafening crash. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the storm outside, is a giant of a man. He is at least twice as tall as a normal person, with a massive frame and wild, tangled hair. His coat is made of animal skin, and his eyes shine with a kind of rough kindness. This is Rubeus Hagrid, the keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. His presence fills the entire shack, both physically and emotionally. Hagrid strides into the room as if he owns the place, his massive frame filling the doorway and casting a long shadow across the tiny, dimly lit shack. His wild hair and beard are soaked from the storm outside, and water drips from his enormous coat onto the floor. Uncle Vernon, who had been shielding his family from the door as best he could, is shoved aside like a mere inconvenience. Vernon's feeble protests die in his throat as Hagrid's sheer presence overwhelms him. The Dursleys are frozen in shock, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. This enormous stranger, who seems to be twice the size of a normal man, has entered their world without hesitation, as if their authority means nothing. Hagrid's eyes immediately fall on Harry, and his entire demeanor softens. A warm, almost fatherly smile spreads across his face, as though he's greeting a long-lost friend. "Harry, last time I saw ye was only a baby," Hagrid says, his voice booming yet full of affection. He moves toward Harry with a surprising gentleness, brushing aside the tension that fills the room. Harry, wide-eyed, stands speechless, unable to comprehend the sight before him. There is something comforting about Hagrid's presence, despite his immense size and wild appearance. For the first time in his life, Harry feels like someone is here specifically for him, someone who knows him in a way that no one else in this room does. Hagrid reaches into the folds of his coat and pulls out a slightly crumpled envelope. With a knowing smile, he hands the letter to Harry. "Got some at for ye, Harry. Took a bit o' time, but I reckon this one won't be taken away." There is a touch of triumph in Hagrid's voice, as if he knows the lengths the Dursleys have gone to prevent Harry from receiving this letter, and he's determined to see justice done. Harry takes the envelope with trembling hands. He's waited for this moment, without even knowing it, all his life. His fingers trace the thick parchment, feeling its weight and the elegant green ink on the front, addressed, once again, to Mr. H. Potter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea. The address is so specific, so personal, that Harry feels as though it speaks directly to him. With a deep breath, he carefully opens the letter. Inside, written in the same beautiful, swirling green ink, are the words that will forever change his life. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. Harry's heart skips a beat. His eyes scan the letter again and again, barely able to comprehend what he's reading. He's been accepted into a school of magic, Hogwarts, a place that he's never heard of, but feels strangely connected to, as if it has always been a part of his destiny. The letter goes on to explain that Harry is, in fact, a wizard, and that he has been invited to attend Hogwarts to learn about his powers. Every word seems to light up some deep part of him that had been buried under years of neglect and confusion. He's a wizard. Harry's mind races. It's as if the world is opening up for the first time, as if everything that's ever been strange or unexplained in his life suddenly makes sense. The weird things that happened when he was scared or angry, the glass disappearing at the zoo, his hair growing back overnight, the strange dreams. Everything was because of magic, and it had always been inside him. This letter is more than just an invitation. It's the key to a world that has been kept hidden from him for so long. While Harry is lost in his thoughts, Uncle Vernon suddenly explodes into action, his face a violet shade of purple. "He's not going," Vernon bellows, stepping forward with the same determination he had when he tried to stop the letters. "We swore when we took him in we'd put a stop to all this rubbish. Magic, we'll have no more of it." His voice is shaking, both with fear and fury, as he tries desperately to regain control of the situation. But Hagrid, towering over him, looks down with narrowed eyes. Stop. Hagrid's voice is dangerous now, low and rumbling like a distant thunderstorm. Ye mean ter tell me ye kept this from him all these years? Kept him from knowing what he really is? Hagrid's fists clench at his sides, and the room seems to grow smaller, more oppressive. The sheer anger radiating from him makes the Dursleys shrink back in fear. Aunt Petunia, her face pale, stands rigid beside Vernon, her lips thin and trembling. For years, she had managed to keep this secret buried, but now, under Hagrid's furious gaze, it's all unraveling. Finally, Petunia breaks. "Of course we knew," she shrieks, her voice high and trembling, unable to contain her bitterness any longer. "How could we not? My sister was one of them, one of those freaks, and she got herself blown up, and then we were stuck with you." She points at Harry, her hand shaking with a mixture of hatred and fear. Her words cut through the room like a knife, and Harry feels a jolt of shock. Petunia's voice becomes shrill and desperate. "I knew from the moment you were left on our doorstep that you'd be just like her. I didn't want you to have any part of it. I didn't want anything to do with your world." She takes a deep breath, her face twisting in jealousy and resentment. "Lily was always the special one, always the favorite. I was the ordinary one, the normal one. And now we've been forced to live with this magic in our home." Hagrid's expression softens, but only slightly. "And ye thought ye could stop it," he says quietly, shaking his head. "Did ye really think ye could suppress magic like that? It ain't something ye can just stamp out, Petunia." Vernon, still trying to hold on to some semblance of control, shouts, "We've kept it from him for this long. We've done our best to stamp it out." He looks at Hagrid with wild eyes, as if hoping his rage will somehow intimidate him, but Hagrid is unmoved. "Your best wasn't good enough," Hagrid replies firmly. His tone leaves no room for argument. Harry's a wizard, and no amount of lying or hiding is going to change that. Harry, who has been silently absorbing all this, suddenly feels an overwhelming sense of clarity. All his life, he had been made to feel like a burden, like there was something wrong with him. But now, standing here with the letter in his hands and Hagrid by his side, he realizes that he's not the freak the Dursleys have always made him out to be. He's something far more powerful. He's a wizard. The chapter ends with Harry, overwhelmed and amazed, holding his acceptance letter to Hogwarts. His life is about to change in ways he can't even begin to imagine.